In this demo, we will show you how to create and manage locations. So from the Set Manager screen, I will select the Clients page. Here we can see in the hierarchy we have a number of groups. We have a Europe group with a Laptops and Servers subgroup already created. I'm going to create locations underneath the Laptops subgroup. So I have chosen the Laptops subgroup in the hierarchy, and I can see the Policies tab in the central area. Notice we only have one location currently, and that's the default one that has been created as part of the installation. I'm now going to use the Add Location task. Notice that a warning comes up to say that you cannot add a group that is inheriting policies and settings from a parent group. So before we can do this, we need to disinherit the subgroup Laptops from Europe. And we do that by unchecking the Inherit Policies and Settings box. Now inheritance is off. Now we can add the location. So running the Add Location wizard, the first prompt will be to give it a name. I'm creating a remote location. The conditions that I wish to apply when the client switches to the remote, I can use the drop-down box and select from this list. I'm going to use the client connection to the management server as one of my conditions. I could use an IP range or a selection to a DNS server, or even a network connection type. So my choice is to either let the client connect to the management server, or when the client cannot connect to the management server. When the client is located in a remote location, it's likely that they cannot connect to the management server. So this is the radio button that I will select. And I can now finish that wizard, and the pop-up will warn me that the location has been added to the Laptops group. And that now displays. Let us now manage locations. So now I can see the locations that have been applied to my selected group. Notice we have the default location and the new remote one that I've just created. The default location is the one that's been set up as part of the installation. We can see that it has no current switches or conditions for the default location. I'm going to rename this location. I've renamed this location to Office. I'm going to add in some conditions. Again, I can use the drop-down box as guidance. I'm going to select the IP address as a condition in this case. And I'm going to select the default of if the client computer has one of the IP addresses listed below. And I'm going to select the type as being a range. So I enter the start of the IP range and the end of the range. So this is a condition now that I can create for the Office location to say that as long as the client is within this range, this is one of the conditions that will apply. And we can see that condition is now being created. This may not be sufficient to be sure that the client is actually within the Office physical location, because you could potentially spoof IP addresses. So I'm going to add another. And this criteria can be with an AND relationship or an OR. I'm going to choose the AND to try and make it more secure. And this time I'm going to choose a DNS server address. And I can select the if client computer uses one of the DNS server addresses listed below. So I now need to add in the IP addresses of my DNS servers. So I now have two conditions that the client must comply with to enable this office location to be switched to. This may be sufficient. I'm going to add one more to be absolutely sure, and again with the AND relationship. I'm going to choose the network connection type and Ethernet. So with these three conditions now, with the client must be being between one of these IP addresses and connecting to the DNS server and using Ethernet, the office location should apply. I can now OK that location conditions. Let us go in and manage those locations again and look at the remote one. This is the one we created earlier, and the condition here is when the client does not connect to the management server. It's a very open conditions, so we're assuming that if the client doesn't fulfill the office conditions, then it will fall into this remote one. We want this remote one to be the default location, because we will apply the most restrictive policies to this one. So if we tick the box, set this location as the default, so this is the location that the clients will use if they do not fulfill the office conditions. We can review the office location now and see that this is no longer set as the location default, because you can only have one default location in any group. So I'm now happy with these two locations that have been created. The last thing I want to check before finishing with locations is checking the general settings for this particular group. Under the General Settings tab, we need to ensure that location is set on. That means that the clients will use the locations that we have created. So that has now created and managed the locations.